Welcome to a new world of entertainment. The ultimate entertainment platform. Featuring, from Winkler Pictures and Mike Up Gaming, Mike Winkler. Jason Kabasic. The Forsaken Avenger, Martin Houston. And from Condiment Games, Jeremy Larson. Created by friends. Listen to our podcast and watch live discussions on Facebook and YouTube. Gaming streaming featuring Forsaken Avenger and Mike Up Gaming. And visit our site for written movie and television reviews. Subscribe to our podcast and visit our site for more info. Welcome to LCA Entertainment. On this episode of our podcast.
And now, the end is near, so I face the final curtain.
We discuss John Wick Chapter 2, Chapter 3, and Chapter 4.
I'll say it clear, I'll state my case, which I'm certain I've lived a life that's full. I travel.
Saying goodbyes.
Saying hello.
You think your wife can hear you?
No.
Then why bother?
Maybe I'm wrong.
I did it my
We will be discussing all three movies in depth, so there will be spoilers.
People keep asking if I'm back, and I haven't really had an answer. But now, yeah, I'm thinking I'm back.
regret. I've had a few, but then again, too few to mention. I did what I had to do, saw it through without exemption. I planned each charted course, each careful step on the byway.
We're not going in like the old days. Just a conversation.
Nothing's ever just a conversation with you, John.
What has he got? If not himself, then he has not to save me. And not the words of one who kneels. The very
You and I left a good life behind a long time ago, my friend.
And now, here are your hosts for this episode, Mike Winkler and Jason Kabasic. Welcome back to LCA Entertainment. It's been a long hiatus, but we are back to discuss the final three chapters of the John Wick series. Maybe the final three. That's going to be a discussion we're going to have here. So
I don't want to. We'll get into that one.
that'll be a debate all in itself, but it's great to be back. Just Jason and I here today.
Yeah, we've been putting this off for way too long.
No, the last podcast that we brought you all was actually the last part of the Alien retrospective. That was all the way back at the end of November. So we have not even done one in the new year. This is the 2023 first podcast.
Yeah, what a way to start off.
Yeah, so Jason and I just
it's been how long since we discussed the first movie?
Oh, that was your first podcast back after you were gone for a while. So that 2 years, 2.5 years.
It had to have been something like that.
Yeah, and so we saw John Wick Chapter 4. What was it on Monday, which will be about 3 days ago. So it's pretty fresh in our minds. So, but we'll get to that one as we progress along.
Oh, we've got a lot to go over today.
Yeah.
And yeah, in case you guys were not aware, yes, spoiler warning. There
Yes.
you go.
Yeah.
If you
definitely
didn't get
spoilers.
the message during the build up to us beginning here, or from that alone, us saying spoiler warning, well, that's completely on you.
Well, I mean, I think if you're listening to this, that means you've already seen chapters 2 and 3, I would hope. 4, maybe not so much. So maybe watch our 2 and 3 discussion here, and then when we get to 4, if you haven't seen it, escape out.
There you go. You've been warned.
You've been warned. We'll let you know when we get to chapter 4 that it's time for you to leave if you haven't seen it yet.
All right. So, should we dive right into it here?
Yeah, dive right into chapter 2, which I will say this right now. Chapter 2 is my personal favorite. So this will be a welcome discussion for chapter 2.
I'm going to say that 4 was my favorite out of the series.
Fair enough. And the thing of it is, too, what's great about this series is that all 4 movies are excellent, so you really can't go wrong with any one of them.
No, you can't.
There's not really a weak link among them. I can't pick one that's really the weakest.
Yeah, you really can't. That's the thing.
Mm-mm. No, they're all pretty strong. They all have good stories. Each one has its own good villain. This is not going to be a podcast where we talk bad about it.
Think about what went down in the first one to where we are now. I'm pretty sure they and everyone else that watched had no idea that this was going to become as big as it did.
No, when the first one came out, no. I think it was a one
and
and done.
That was going to be the one and done, and that was it. And it turned into this massive franchise.
Yeah, when you watch the first one, there didn't have to be a sequel. It was its own story. There was really no need for a continuation, but it was just so good, so successful, they had room to do more.
Yeah, they did.
And this movie, Chapter 2, really expands the universe because we actually get to know about the High Table, which is something that was very, very little discussed in the first film.
Oh, yeah. And then as you progress further on in the series of films, like you get more and more discussion of the High Table.
And I think even after 4 movies, we still have a lot of room to even know even more about them.
Which can be discussed in the Continental TV show and in Ballerina and whatever other projects they do other than, main John Wick franchise movies.
Yeah, no,
because they should not make any more after 4.
We'll get to that debate in chapter 4. If you guys haven't noticed yet, we both have conflicting areas of what we think should happen with the franchise going forward. We will dive straight into that shortly because there will be spoilers as to how 4 ends. Again,
shortly?
Yeah.
We'll be here for a while.
Okay, so anyway, back to chapter 2. So the beginning of this movie, let me tell you, this movie just dives right the fuck in.
They all, minus the first one, which it gave us, a little bit as to who John Wick is necessarily, not really even knowing who John Wick is to begin the movie. It's, how we discussed in that one, it began with John at the, funeral for his wife. Who had just passed, and then we get the whole dog, and then we get everything that led up to John getting his house broken into, cars stolen, beaten up, and then the dog got killed.
Yeah, don't even get me started on the dog getting killed. Oh,
and then then we dive right into the action from there, and it's been essentially from about a quarter of the way through chapter 1 through the end of chapter 4 that we watched. It's been just nonstop action.
Yeah. Usually the one thing that I will always do when a movie sometimes focuses on the action, if you watch a lot of films, you immediately think of, oh, they're doing this to fill time because they don't have a good story. So they're doing this to fill time, to fill in the gaps. They can't think of how to continue a story. But this is not the case with these films because the action is actually what physically drives these films to where they want to go.
Well, it makes no disguise as to what it is. It knows exactly what it is. This is an action film. This is an action series, an action franchise. Like, if you are a fan of action films and fight scenes and explosions and, bullets raining down everywhere, this is your proverbial wet dream.
You ain't wrong. And Keanu Reeves made a perfect point this past week. He said the Oscars needs to start taking recognition of stunt teams because this movie, hands down, would have been the best stunts of the year. Probably the best stunts of the last 10 years.
And it goes even beyond that. Like, you take a look at the shit that happened, like, back in even the 80s and 90s with, Jackie Chan doing his own stunts and, like, Legend of the Drunken Fist, or, any of the even Rush Hour movies, him doing his own, like, you got to give recognition to the stunt team.
Oh, God, yeah. I mean, this movie wouldn't be anywhere near the thing that it is without that stunt team. That stunt team makes this film what it is. And I congratulate them.
The thing about this series, too, that just boggles my mind is the fact that Keanu Reeves really did a lot of his own stunts.
Yeah, especially for his age too. It's a miracle.
And not only do his own stunts, but went through like the martial arts training to do those fight scenes that he did. He went to an actual training camp for soldiers and shit with SWAT training to go and accurately show like how people will reload a gun in a firefight situation like that, how to check for bullets, the angles that you're shooting at constantly. It just boggles my mind.
Well, what's great about this too is that he had some prior fight experience when he did the Matrix trilogy, of course, and that definitely helped. But we all thought that his fight scenes in the Matrix were awesome. After watching these films, the Matrix films look like B-movie fights.
The Matrix movie fights compared to what we've seen in the John Wick fights, oh my God, the world of difference.
Yeah, and the thing of it is, Keanu was 20 years younger when he did the first Matrix. So you think, 20 years younger, he can move faster, be more agile, would look better.
No, tell that to Keanu.
John Wick would kick Neo's ass. Take away Neo's flying powers and shit, John Wick would kick his ass.
Easily. Anyway, getting off topic here, as per usual already.
Okay.
Chapter 2. Start off with diving right into the thick of things.
Well, I like the fact they give the references to the dog and everything like that with his car. And I actually, when I remember seeing this film, I had initially forgotten that at the end of John Wick 1, he never did get his car back. So this was the perfect way to start this movie.
And that really, when it came to like during that interrogation scene in 1, after Vigo and his men captured John and had him in that chapel, and when they had that whole dialogue scene, when John said it was never really about the car, it was because of the dog.
Oh yeah, it was always about the
dog.
And
what the dog represented. So this whole thing really was because of the dog.
Yeah. No, yeah, the whole motivation for this, I mean, I guess you could say the motivation really is his wife, because it was the wife giving him the dog. But yeah, in the form of symbolism, yeah, it's the dog.
Anyways, going on here, getting more into the Terrasub syndicate here with Vigo's, was it brother?
Yes. Vigo. I'm trying to remember. Vigo. Yes, it was. You're right.
But yeah, I covers his car from Abram Tarasov, uh, dispatches his men uh, that obviously really damaged the Mustang, but obviously spared Tarasov under the promise of peace and returns home. And then John has his Mustang taken for repairs to Aurelia's chop shop. But let's discuss here, right in the middle of all that, the fear that Abram had of John that was, brought about in the first movie, like legit fear and awe of John Wick. Again, going over the discussion of him killing 3 men in a bar with a fucking pencil.
And that was actually brought up again in 4 too with the pencil, which I thought was nice.
I love how in this movie too, we also did get a reference later on in the movie to it with him, you actually seeing him kill, I think it was 3 men at the cafe with the fucking pencil.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you see how he did it.
I don't think there's anything that John Wick can not kill you with. I think he can kill you with probably the simplest of things. And a pencil's simple, but I think anything he can kill you with, he could find a way.
Yeah. Anyways, go ahead and take over.
All right. So the big plot point of this movie here is that Santino D'Antonio comes to him with this marker, which, if you don't know what the marker is supposed to symbolize for everybody out there, it's basically a blood oath.
Which brings up an interesting point, because you really didn't see anything for that in 4, but in the first 3 films, they introduced different different forms of art, markers or currency that you only see in the underworld. Like the first movie, those gold coins.
Yeah. The gold
this
coins
movie was
the Continental.
This movie, John Wick 2 was the marker for the the blood oath that it essentially, someone presented you with that marker, you're obligated to help them with the task that they're asking you about.
Mm-hmm.
And then the third movie was, hold on one second. Go ahead and continue, Mike.
So Santo wants to basically.
Oh, you didn't have to bring it up.
Basically has a favor that he wants him to do, and John is resilient to it because he doesn't want to stay in the life. He wants to stay out of the table. He wants to stay away from it.
Yeah,
but
no,
Santonio
he
basically
literally
tells him,
only came back in because of everything that happened in the first movie at the beginning of the first movie with his car being stolen and his dog being killed.
Well, the thing of it is too,
really
is when
no other part of it.
When you think about the big picture of all this too, it's like when you look at the events through all the films, none of this had to happen. The high table didn't have to have John be a problem if they just will let him get out of this marker. But even if you go back to the marker, he fulfilled the marker, but Santonio, being the asshole that he is, wanted John killed anyway, even after he fulfilled his marker favor.
Well, here's the thing about that too, and I don't know if they actually discussed this in the movie at all, but it's pretty glaringly obvious, just like the glare above my head, because sorry about that, folks. I have blinds that are just not doing a good job of protecting the sun out of the room. My apologies. Anyway, back to what I was discussing. It was glaringly obvious, too, that he was tying up loose ends to this contract that he gave John to kill his sister, so that way Santino would have her seat at the high table. And he was doing that to tie up loose ends because of the fact, he didn't want that brought back on him. Any retribution being brought down on him from this.
See, what he should have done is, Santonio actually didn't properly plan for it, because when he asked John to do it, he should have had a contingency plan as to how John could make it look like that she was killed by some random person instead of it being directly tied to him, and he didn't prepare for that.
Well, either way, it would not have mattered. He just ordered that to happen because he knew he was going to do that to whoever, just because he wanted to tie up that loose end and make sure that, none of this was brought back to him. And it was just
that
like,
came back to bite him in the ass.
and it's just like, we're going a little bit further into a film here, obviously, real quick. But it was just like how when Santino was in the Continental and talking to Winston in the lounge, how Winston told him, like, you brought the devil back. I'm trying to remember exactly how he worded it here. It was something along the lines of, you pushed the devil and you expected him to not push back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, you can't. I mean, let it be the lesson of the first film be it. Obviously, Santino thought he could outsmart John. Well, he was wrong.
Oh, easily, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
It ended up backfiring.
we had all the events of that. We had him going to Rome. It was to kill Santino's sister, which you end up seeing that she ended up slicing her wrist. That way she go on her own hands. But John obviously shot her in the head to be able to actually say that he fulfilled the contract with Santino and the blood marker. And then all those events happened. But it was believe it was Common is the actor.
Yeah, he was Gianna's bodyguard.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what the bodyguard's name was.
His name was Cassian.
Yeah, Cassian, that's right. But yeah, John and Cassian having that big fight throughout the city that ended up landing them into the Rome Continental's steps and property. And you just see it was a thing that I noticed in the last couple of films too, these last couple of films, that every time like you see something happen and they end up on the Continental's grounds in any way, shape, or form, you just see them sort of stop, look at each other, and then next scene is them at the bar just having a drink like nothing happened.
Yeah, I love that, just because not being able to conduct business on the grounds of the Continental, which circles back to the end of the film, which we'll get to. But yeah, I just like the little moments. I like the history that he has with Common. Deep down, I almost would have liked to have known what their history really was.
Who, Cassian and John?
Yeah, because it seems like it was a very confrontational history. Like, this isn't the first time these two have butted heads on a contract, perhaps.
I don't think it was so much the fact that it was them butting heads. I think it was the fact, it's just like how all the major players in the assassin underworld of John Wick, how they knew each other and they always had high respect for each other.
Yeah, that's the one thing I like too, is that these two have mutual respect for each other, and
you can tell like they have the mutual respect for each other and everything. Even after the discussion of everything that happened, with John letting Cassian know about Santino holding the marker over his head for the hit and to fulfill that, and Cassian's like, I'll make it quick at least as a sign of respect.
Yeah, although
that it's an inevitable fight,
right?
That's going to happen there, and it's as soon as you see him leave. Like, one of the things I noticed that John will actually talk and discuss things with you, and that professional manner. But then it was right after that when he was getting ready to leave, and you see Ares sitting at the lounge as well in the other chair, If John doesn't know you or doesn't like he's just going to keep it kind of curt and small talk.
Ruby Rose has the strangest role in this because she never talks once. It's all done in sign language and subtitles.
Ruby Ares was deaf.
She's a mute.
No, she wasn't deaf. She was a mute.
Right. Yeah, I know. It's saying it's funny that Ruby Rose plays this character, because if you look at her in a lot of other stuff, she's always the one that talks a lot. So for this to be the opposite is actually quite hilarious.
Yeah. But then we get into, Santino putting the $7 million hit on John's head, everything backfiring. You see them going through I forget which like almost fun house style museum, like with the glass mirrors and everything.
Oh, this was so wonderfully shot. This whole movie's wonderfully shot, but this scene here with all these mirrors. First of all, I gotta give credit because the way it's shot, and that they never once were in a situation where there's reflections of the camera. I mean, yes, you can go in post and you can eliminate that, but think of if they did eliminate cameras in post in this scene, imagine how long that would have taken.
Yeah. And here's the thing too, like people need to like I'm sure a lot of people have realized, but more people need to notice too on like the subtle things you can pick up on in these films, like from the first one and this one specifically. Like how in the first one when Vigo's henchman broke into John's house to kill him. I know there's one specific part of that scene that I'm talking about, Mike, and it was the one where they're in his kitchen, I believe it was, and the henchman and the one guy is shot his gun like where John was instead of like where John would be, and from that shot alone, like where the guy shot at, John was able to pick up on, exactly where to aim at from that and was able to take him out. And just like how in this one, during that like glass mirror, the long sequence we got, the one guy shot at, one of the glass mirrors with John's reflection. But from that, like John was able to like, all right, he knew kind of exactly where to aim at, where it wasn't going to be a mirror, and was able to get him.
Yeah, no, yeah. The scene is so well laid out on how it progresses, and it probably actually goes up as one of the top sequences in all four movies because something about it's just kind of unique, and there's never anything that's done similar to that in the other two movies.
Oh yeah.
So this definitely stands out as a one of the best moments of the series.
No, I agree. And then we get to obviously Santino was able to flee and get to Continental Grounds in New York. And obviously we had the whole sequence with him and Winston. But Winston pretty much telling him, "Fuck off! You don't run the Continental. No one runs the Continental except for him. Like
right.
He's the manager of that location. Like you'll be able to enjoy your privileges while you still can."
Yeah, I like too how he just sits down. Santino just sits down and has the steak when John comes down the steps, and he's just acting cocky, like, here's nothing about me.
Here's the thing about that, the right before that part, and it was when you see John walking in, gun in hand, hobbling towards Sharon's desk or the front desk, and Sharon looks at him, and he knows that John is here to kill Santino. Right there on the grounds, and Sharon just kind of looks at me like, he's waiting for you in the lounge. Like he knows what's going to happen. He knows that John's willing to break, continental rules in order to, solve this once and for all.
Right. And John does it without any sort of hesitation.
Well, that's the thing too. Like you get, like you expect in all the other action movies and sequences that you'd expect in all other films. Where they'd have this dialogue between the two and everything. You see Santino kind of just mocking him while Winston's trying to convince, like, just walk away, don't do anything you're going to regret. And then while Santino's in mid-sentence, John just, without saying a word, gun up, shoots him right in the head.
Which I can't blame him because he leaves him alive. He's just going to come and try to kill him again.
Yeah, so and then you just see the look on Winston's face, like, what have you done? And, like, he knows, like, he had no choice but to do what we're going to get into here in just a second.
Yeah. I remember when I saw this movie the first time and seeing how this movie was ending and how it ends with the whole excommunicado thing. And And this ending killed me because when it literally ends with John running away with everybody being
and it's not even just that, but it's the events at that fountain that's at the park where John met Winston and they discussed everything.
Mm-hmm.
And, Winston just kind of looked at someone, gave him a quick nod. You see that guy relay a message over the phone, and everyone just stopped dead in their tracks, turned around, looked at him. And it's almost like, is this like an alternate universe where everyone's just a deadly assassin? And
that's how I perceived it.
And then you just see Winston do one of these, and then everyone just proceeds back to going around like normal.
Yeah, it makes you really wonder in this world, really, how many people really are a part of the High Table. I mean, based on how we're giving insight to all this, it makes you really wonder, like, how far does it expand out?
That's one thing we forgot about, Mike. The introduction of one key character, the Bowery King.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's funny about him because I'm wondering, like, how... I don't even know how I even want to explain this. The Bowery King, he's the one character, I believe, in these 3 movies where there is so much more about him that we have not found out. And we really don't know that much about him 4 movies in.
No, we don't.
And that's something that I don't know if it can be explored. I mean, I guess it can't be explored really in the Continental series because that's supposed to be a young Winston. But then again,
it is like the movie or the show supposed, because I looked a little bit more into this.
Mm-hmm.
The show is supposed to take place in the like early to mid 70s and showing like the beginnings of like the Continental in New York and Winston's journey to, become this high member of their society and take over and become the manager. So what I think we're finally going to get through that series too, it's like we finally got like a taste of it in the 3rd movie. Like all the theories started coming up, and that's what is his exact relationship with John. Like at the end of the 4th movie, it was pretty much like all but obvious like what the end outcome is with that. But look, we're going to get into that obviously when we get to the 4th film. But I think through the show, we're going to finally get, a full explanation as to what exactly Winston is to John and vice versa.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's definitely a deeper connection there, and whether the Continental series is going to really get into that or not, I'm hoping it does. I almost feel like at this point with the Henson 4, it almost has to. But the thing that concerns me is that considering the Continental series was written pretty well before Chapter 4 had come out, it makes me wonder if that was even like in the plan of things by the time the show was made. So maybe it will. Maybe they did rewrites. Maybe they did reshoots. Maybe not. I don't know. Maybe there was a plan for it all along. We'll find out.
Yeah, and I don't know whether it was in this film or the 3rd one, but like finding out that John is actually a Soviet orphan too. Like he is actually not, like American like we thought. Like he's actually a member of like the Soviet country.
Yeah, his family connection is kind of shown a little bit in Chapter 3 when he goes to the theater where all the ballerinas are, which will be the spinoff we'll get later.
Get into that here in just a second.
And then we get some more of that in Chapter 4 with the family that helps him set up the final battle. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot even with his family that we still don't understand.
Not at all. We understand at this point. We get more details to obviously how John was able to pull off that quote unquote impossible task in Chapter 1 that Vigo mentioned in order for him to get out of the family, be able
Mm-hmm.
to, live a normal life at that point. We
Right.
find out more about that. And we find out more and more throughout each film about the history of John, like the origin story of him, about a lot of these characters.
Yeah, we just never really get the full story.
Yeah.
So there's definitely a lot to build off of there. But all in all, the ending of this movie was huge. I mean, at this point, when this movie ends,
The movie ends with him running away from, running out of the park, considering that Winston said that he'd be able to give him an hour and no more before, before the contract got doubled to 14 million, I believe it was, and declared excommunicado.
yeah, it was at this point we knew that there had to be a John Wick 3. There was no question of
Oh yeah, no,
what had to
like
come.
this one, like how the first one ended, could have been just a standalone movie, not been anything
Right.
involving a franchise. After the second one, you knew right away that there was going to be another movie coming out.
Yeah, yeah. But at this point, we knew that it had to happen, and it definitely set up something we knew was going to be that much bigger. And we were not disappointed with Chapter 3 with that.
No, not at all.
So okay, so before we get into Chapter 3, overall grade of Chapter 2.
We'll get into grading at the end of doing 4. After the end of
you,
4, I
you,
think.
you want to wait. You want to wait.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So we'll go right into Chapter 3, right where it begins with
It literally
Thundering
right
Rainstorm.
after everything.
Mm-hmm. Thundering Rainstorm with him running with his dog just to get into a cab and try to heal.
He gets to the New York Library.
Oh yeah, where he fights the big.
And then he
ogre.
he gets the Mark medallion and a rosary, which is another one of the things that got introduced in this, for later on in the film.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that they got an NBA basketball player to portray a hitman in this movie at the beginning of the film.
Yeah, that was a little bit of a surprise.
It was a little bit of a surprise, but I was laughing my ass off.
Well, the lines of dialogue he gets are funny. The whole scene plays out is funny. The way his death scene is done is funny. Every part of this sequence is
the way that his death scene was written was brutal.
It was brutal, but it was still funny.
I'm sorry. I would not want to have my neck broken by being repeatedly slammed into my jaw by a book. Like, that has got to be one of the most brutal things I've seen in this film.
That's what makes it so funny.
Sure. Funny. We'll go with that.
I like it.
Ladies and gentlemen, we know who's the one who kills puppies around here, and his name is Mike.
Yeah. No, that definitely is not me. So, yeah, the basketball player that it was, by name
Boban
was,
Marjanovic.
Correct. He's a Serbian basketball player, plays for the Houston Rockets. It goes on to say in the cliff notes here that the fight was actually inspired by the Bruce Lee film Game of Death.
Yep.
So, yeah. So that was a cool little scene to get in the first 10 minutes.
Oh yeah.
It's actually our first action scene.
And then right after that he gets medical attention from the doctor. And it was like, as he was getting, stitched up and everything, the excommunicado order came in, and the doctor had to just stopped everything.
Mm-hmm.
Because because John had to suture himself up at that point.
Yeah. I'll tell you, I find it so intriguing how this whole system works with these coins. And how they're used for currency, for favors, or night stays at the Continental, whatever.
What I think it is, I don't think it's so much as it's for monetary purposes as it is like it shows your value in the underworld.
Right. It's just a unique way of how they go about purchasing whatever they may purchase.
Yeah. But after this, we get to John meeting with the director, who's the head of, which ends up becoming a big thing in this upcoming film. Spoiler, the Ruska Roma Syndicate.
Yes. So the
'Cause
rosary.
he presents her with the rosary and demands safe passage to Casablanca, which we end up finding out that John was a former member, high member of the Ruska Roma Syndicate. So, she reluctantly agreed to help him.
See, there's so much I could go into if they did a John Wick prequel movie, because I would love to see just how much John was involved with the high table.
Another thing I want to discuss after we get done with 4.
Mm-hmm. So I mean, there's a lot to build and work off of here. So okay, go ahead and continue. I had to bring that up.
But yeah, so there's that, and then at the same time as this is going on, you've got the high table adjudicator, which is a main thing, essentially villain in this film.
Mm-hmm. Very much so.
Coming into the Continental and just not even giving Winston or the Bowery King a chance to discuss what had happened or anything. Says you've got 7 days to resign from your positions for helping John.
I'm actually bummed that we didn't get a chance to see the adjudicator fight, because it looks to me like she could fight.
You say, I don't think so much as that the adjudicator was there to fight, so much as it was that they were there to, as a position of power, like someone who had the authority of the high table and spoke for the high table. It's just like how in the Fort movie we had the Harbinger, who was like the middleman for the high table.
Just still a bummer, because she looks like she could fight.
Yeah.
She has the look, and she even has the badass look of like a hitman that could fight. And we don't get to see that, but that's okay. But she really is the film's true villain, I really do believe, because she is a lingering presence throughout the whole film, between threatening people, having people killed, and the whole reason why the Continental gets raided at the end. She really is the film's true villain.
Yeah. And then after that, obviously, you get the adjudicator going to who we end up finding out is Zero, who we think is just someone that's regular sushi chef. Mm-hmm. And that just after the adjudicator presents him with the marker, that essentially just drops the whole, foreign, like, oh, thank you, act. And, it's like, I think it was like, I wasn't expecting it to come so quick.
Mm-hmm.
And, starts the whole mission, and obviously ends up agreeing to do everything here because, his like rock hard obsession with John Wick being like his fucking roadie.
His fucking roadie?
Yeah, you know what I mean there.
Fair enough.
Trying to, his fucking groupie, like, oh my God, yes, I've been such a big fan of yours, John.
Yeah, sure.
But adjudicator orders Zero to, stab the director through both hands for helping John.
Mm-hmm. Asshole move.
Which you can go ahead and take over from here.
Okay, so in Casablanca, we get to see that John meets his former friend and manager of the Moroccan Continental in Sophia, played by the wonderful Halle Berry. I like her character just because I wanted to know more about her. I wanted to know more about how well she knew John. And the fact that she gets these badass dogs to fight in these scenes, which, by the way, this definitely is a top 3 moment of the whole series. This scene with the dogs in this fight scene is so well done. They have these dogs so well trained. And just between the way it's filmed, choreographed, this is a top 3 moment.
Easy. Oh, yeah, easy. Then it was, let's see. Let's get into that real quick. So we're getting into, obviously, talking about how with John getting presenting Sophia with the marker, which binds her to return a debt to John. Let's see here. Essentially demanding Sophia to take John to see the elder, the one who sits above the high table.
Yeah, and he does kill the elder, correct?
Nope.
No, I'm sorry. The elder is the one he meets in the desert.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Okay, no, he does not. Yeah, and the fact that we get this thing where he severs his ring finger. Why do I not remember this though? Because in John Wick 4, did you notice that his ring finger was cut in that movie? Because I didn't in 4.
It was, you saw it every time you saw that hand.
I don't know why I didn't. I guess I kind of forgotten about it when I saw the movie to begin with, but now that I'm reminded about it, I'll have to pay attention to it more. But I had kind of forgotten that he had cut that off.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the elder.
That whole discussion with the elder, saying that John's sins and everything can be forgiven. He has to kill Winston in order for the bounty on John's head and everything to be lifted and him to be left alone.
Which John never had any intention on.
And John offered up his ring and the finger as to show loyalty for that to happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I'm a firm believer though that I don't think John ever had the intention of ever killing Winston. I think he knew what his plan was going to have to be in that moment, because I just don't believe that. There's never a moment really in this movie or any other movie really where you ever feel like John needs to or wants to eliminate Winston. There's just too much of a bond there where it'd be like killing his father, which we'll talk about, potential father. But yeah, this scene where he goes back to New York.
That scene was the beginning of the theories and everything for a lot of people as to, what is Winston's connection to John?
Yeah, you and I both have our theories on what that could potentially be. That's something we don't know if we're going to find out. But yeah, so back to New York.
Before John can get to the safety of the Continental grounds, because at this point, he did have his excommunicado status essentially lifted.
For this moment,
to be able to be in the services of the Continental's grounds.
Mm-hmm.
And before he was able to get there, he gets attacked by Zero and his students. Which at that point, then again, it's just like his and Cassian's fight ends up spilling onto Continental grounds. Winston, I forget who it was Winston or Sharon or who it was, but someone cut out just the look of, like no business on Continental grounds. And that's when you get the discussion between John and Zero, again, at the bar, having a drink.
Mm-hmm.
With Zero's like, I'm your biggest fan.
Yeah, it's actually quite hilarious. It really is. Because Zero's that one character where even though he's a bad guy, you can't help but like the guy because you just kind of respect his style.
Yeah. But so then obviously the adjudicator arrives to see what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. Winston refuses to give up his position. John refuses to kill him. And then the adjudicator then said, with the high table's word, like the New York Continental is no longer consecrated. It's essentially a neutral zone at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think is kind of what Winston, Sharon, and John have all been waiting for, is just that way, be able to see the goodies that they got in their armory.
And they have plenty.
And actually seeing Sharon actually participating in this firefight.
Yeah, that was pretty badass.
And then obviously we get everything there, the whole big fight scene. We've got John and Zero's fight that happens. That good fight scene there. John obviously getting the better of Zero, stabbing him, leaving him to die. And then we get to one of the bigger scenes in this franchise. On top of the rooftop of the Continental, Winston, Sharon, and the Adjudicator all meeting on top, having a parlay and saying, the Adjudicator saying, we'll come with the full force of the high table. And Winston's like, we've got New York. We're bigger than the high table.
Yeah.
And leading all to a parlay as John walks up onto the rooftop as well.
Mm-hmm.
Winston being able to get the Continental reconsecrated and his position as the manager of the hotel back for, killing John. And then you see Winston shooting at John. Is she thinking, like, why? Like, what's going on? Like, is Winston really behind everything this entire time with this?
I mean, it made you question it. It really did.
And then, like, you go back and watch the scenes over and over again, and you realize, obviously, that Winston knows that John has the Kevlar suit on.
Mm-hmm. I mean,
and,
if you
look, purposely not aiming for his head too.
I mean, if you look to, John pretty much has that Kevlar vest on throughout almost every moment throughout the series, really, for the exception of part of the first one and, of course, the last sequences in 4.
Yeah. We get the ending sequences of the movie with Winston and Sharon getting the Continental back in order, ready to go, and with John being brought to the Bowery King's little throne area room, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And, Bowery King, like, how pissed are you? Are you pissed, John? And you just see him looking up after, doing one of these just right at him, and it's just like, yeah.
What's funny about this, too, because I remember when I went to go see the movie the first time, this was before, there was rumors that this third one could have been the last one. And I'm thinking throughout as I'm watching this, I'm like, okay, I'm waiting for the series to end here. How's it going to end? And then when the movie ends here, I'm like, oh, so there's going to be a 4? Because they really didn't establish there was going to be a 4 when this movie came out.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't until the movie ended where I was like, oh, okay, so I guess there's going to be a 4. And it was really surprising for this movie to end this way.
And here's the thing, too, that really just was absolutely insane to think about. Until, like, when the Adjudicator had discussed with John, or not with John, but with Winston and, or not even Winston and Sharon, no, when she met up with Zero, the amount of bodies that John accumulated in that week. So the events of between the first movie up to that point were all in just 1 week.
That's hard to imagine.
Just hundreds of dead bodies within a week.
The morgue's not going to have enough room for all of them.
No, not at all.
But yeah, this movie ends with a surprising cliffhanger, just like number 2. So we knew 4 was coming. And to be honest, we had to wait.
To you for just a minute here, Mike. I got to run out real quick.
Go ahead.
Right.
And we didn't know 4 was coming, obviously, like I said. But the question kind of remained here: where was the series going to go? Because we established it all had to come down to the high table as the big hole of how it was all going to go down. But we ended up waiting a very, very, very long time, actually, for Chapter 4, because the third one came out in 2019, middle of 2019, and we didn't get Chapter 4, until March of this year. So we nearly had to wait 4 years to get this. And I remember when Chapter 3 came out, they were talking about, oh yeah, they're potentially going to do a 4, but it never really was officially confirmed they were going to do 4 until they actually confirmed it. But of course, COVID played a huge part in that, as usual. Movie was announced that it was going to happen. They hired different people. Movie actually started filming, according to Wikipedia, June to October of 2021. So it still took a year and a half after filming for the film to actually be released. So it's interesting that that happened. Um, so I guess what I should say is going into 4, I had some really high hopes as to what this series could do, because the initial rumor was they were going to do 4 and 5 and shoot them back to back. So it's like we were going to get 2 more movies. But when COVID happened, 5 kind of dropped off the face, and we were just going to get 4 for now, with the potential of a 5th movie. But as Jason and I kind of get into what the 4th movie actually ends up being, he and I got conflict on this. I feel as though one of my lingering problems with 4 is it I don't even know what I really want to say to this, because I felt as though the one thing this film had to do was to give us the final showdown with the High Table.
All right, sorry about that. I'm back. What were we getting into now?
I just started talking about Chapter 4 and what going into it, what I thought the film had to do. And that when the film was announced initially before COVID, it was announced that this movie was going to be part 4 and part 5 shot back to back. Then COVID happened. They said, we're going to put 5 on the back burner. We're going to do 4 for now with the potential of doing 5 later.
Well, no, if you've watched any of because this is one of the things I wanted to discuss. If you watched any of the interviews that were done within the last week or so, it wasn't because of COVID. It was because they were looking at it like, we can put our all into doing 4 and give it, a proper ending.
Which the studio, by the way, was not that happy about.
Okay, fuck the studio.
Well, the studio now is going to play influence on it now, because...
Go ahead to see if you can get Keanu to come back. We're going to discuss this after we get done going over the film.
Keanu did say that he's willing to do 5. He's not out on it.
Good luck, though, for now.
Well, it's not going to happen now. I mean, we might be talking 3 or 4 years before it actually happens, because, you have the Continental and the Ballerina movie first.
Any film at this point that happens really can only be considered prequels at this point with how that ended.
There's room to do a sequel. There's a lot of stuff that they can still divulge into, and his death is not the way it's portrayed in the movie. It's not
he
concrete.
Look, the entire scenario, the entire premise of the 4th film was a discussion of, we let being our good lives long ago. Like, the only way John knew, the only way that he was going to finally get true peace and calm away and live a normal life was when he was dead. And the whole premise of, like, one big discussion point throughout the entire film was, all of John's actions from this series and everything, obviously, in his past had gotten the people that, he trusted and cared about killed. And he did not want that anymore.
That's true, but there's two almost problems here with this, though. Number one, the first problem is that they make it their mission, especially in 3, that basically they want to take down the High Table for good, which doesn't happen at the end of this movie. But that kind of gets pushed back, because my biggest problem is, with all 4 movies, by the way he dies at the end of this film, it almost makes his fight almost feel redundant, because everything he survives, everything he does in all 4 movies with the goal of getting free from the table, just so when he finally gets free from the table, he dies anyway.
The amount of injury, everything just finally got to him. Like, simple as that.
I understand what happens to the character. I'm talking about in the grand scheme of the story being planned. It makes sense as to why his character would die, because any living person would never or really survive a lot of shit that he survives. But I mean, just the whole layout of the story just feels almost redundant.
doesn't feel redundant to me. It feels like exactly the way it should have panned out. Like, the only way I think everything was going to come to a conclusive end for John was with his death. At this point, you're going to take away from that moment in the film and the series as a whole by doing a fifth film. You're going to ruin any sort of magic that this last film created, and everything feeling like it all came full circle by doing another film at this point.
The only way it doesn't come full circle, though, is because the high table still exists. They still exist.
Okay, here's
Basically,
the thing, though. It
what he
was
does
discussed
is
it was discussed in the movie. Okay, you took out all the members of the high table. Cool. They're always going to be another one to take its place. They're like a Hydra. They're like the Hydra in Greek mythology. Like, you're going to run out of bullets before you can take out all the heads.
Well, that's probably true, but at the same time, wouldn't it almost be a good idea that if they took out the heads, and whether it be John or the Bowery King or
And
whoever,
essentially at this point, the only thing you can do at this point, Mike, is if you're going to continue it, you can call it, a John Wick franchise film, but you can't have John Wick in the movie unless it's going to be, like flashbacks or something involving in whatever scenario that they're doing at this point, because it could be that they're going to continue the scenario with, someone like the Bowery King or Winston working on taking out the high table in John's place.
now
That's the only way I can see that happening.
Now, from a studio perspective, and this is just the way Hollywood works. If from a studio perspective, they are going to look at that and they're going to say these films are not going to do the kind of business it's doing now without numero uno.
All right, cool, great, grand. Without doing numero uno, yeah, awesome. You get the star power, and you know what you're going to do? You're going to ruin the credibility of your entire franchise by doing that with how you end films. Why do you think you got films that had these magical endings that were done 10, 20 years ago or so in the past? You see new sequels to them or anything coming out that just completely rewrite the entire history at that point, and it ruins the majesticness of those films, of those franchises. How many times have you seen that?
Prime examples of that, though, is that's what happens when you have different people handling those franchises, when you don't have the actual creators of that franchise actually doing something to continue it properly. Star Wars being a prime example of it. And that's why Keanu perfectly stated that he would not do 5. He will not do 5 without the director. He will not do that because they have to talk about it together to make sure that if they do it, they have a proper plan. And Keanu also said that he would do it if they had something that actually made sense and felt like a proper way to do 5.
Yeah, here's the problem though. What is the studio going to do? What is the studio going to create as a premise that is going to be good enough to make sense with how that last one ended, that's going to be able to get Keanu and the director to come back?
Well, the studio won't come up with the story. Keanu and the director will come up with the story, and then they'll go to the studio and they'll tell them this is what we came up with. If they come up, if they go back to the studio and they say we have nothing, then it won't happen.
Exactly. I don't think we're going to get another film that has John Wick as the leading person.
I mean, we'll see. There's a lot of good explanations as to what happened at the end, and they all make a lot of sense, which is why the ending was done the way it was.
Speaking of the ending, like I was saying, like you see the mark on Winston's arm there, showing that he was a member of the Ruska Roma syndicate, and him saying, goodbye, my son. Right. So one of two things has to be confirmed either in the Continental Series or at some point in the future. And at this point, it only comes down to one of two scenarios, similar scenarios, but two scenarios. Either Winston is actually John's biological dad,
which would make sense,
or B, and this one I think is the more likely scenario, Winston was the father of Helen, and John married into Winston's family.
That's possible too. But both work. The with him being Helen's father, the only thing that really gets me about that is that, like, did John would John obviously would not have known that Winston would have been Helen's father. He obviously wouldn't have known that because he never would treat him as such. So obviously he would not know that.
But you see in the way that Winston treats John compared to everyone else,
Mm-hmm.
like especially if you go back to the first film in particular as a prime example, when Perkins gets called before she is able to kill Marcus, and she gets called, or no, before she gets John, my bad, where she ends up meeting Winston at that one spot, and he just walks up, casually tells her, your privileges have been revoked, and she gets killed right on the spot. Winston treating John differently in the sense that gave him an hour head start essentially to get out as fast as he could before the contract comes out, and he gets declared excommunicado. Like Winston always treated John just like a little bit differently, like he was a member of his own family, and that the end of this movie all but proved that to me. Like I want the official confirmation.
Well, that's something that I always wondered throughout each movie too, is that why did Winston show so much attention to John? Why did he basically give him special treatment compared to everybody else? There had to have been an underlying reason more than just, they're really good friends. There has to be a deeper connection and a deeper meaning as to why. So really, you're right. It has to be one of those two things.
I think that Winston, with John finding out throughout the films and just background lore that, John was born in the Soviet Union and he's an orphan. What if John hit a certain age, or Winston even told the director or whoever was the former head of the Ruska Roma at that point, bring John in, raise him as one of your own.
Yeah. I mean,
and that leading to Marcus obviously training John to be who John Wick is today, and all the events unfolded from there. Like that is just a confirmation that I want to see happen. Give us it's a yes or a no that Winston is related in some way, shape, or form to John. I just want the confirmation so that way to clear it out of my head.
Well, and that's what I'm wondering too, like with the Continental, because it makes me wonder that if he's Helen's father, that maybe in the Continental we're going to see that whoever he's with gets pregnant, and then the baby comes out and names her Helen. That's one way it could happen. With the whole John thing, kind of a similar way of doing things, even if it's like a reference to, like, he says a line in the show where he says, "Yeah, if I ever had a son, I'd probably name him John." Anything to kind of just give us that clarification of one of the two. And again, the Continental may give us that. It may have been a grand plan. Maybe they consulted with who was going to do 4, and they found out, hey, what are you going to do? What do you want to do? So maybe we will
obviously
get that.
We're going big into the ending here, but that's really the main point of like what we wanted to get to it for was the ending. So that's why we're going into that before we did anything else, guys. That was the biggest discussion point and why we specifically were like, don't listen if you don't want to be spoiled for 4.
Because the one ongoing discussion online right now is the ending. Everybody is seeing the ending differently. Everybody has different theories, different things, and it's cool that the ending was put that way because it creates a good topic of discussion. And there's a lot of different ways it can go.
Like, I think that Kane or Don. First of all, getting Donnie Yen to play Kane was a fucking brilliant move on their part.
He's always been great.
You get the actor who does the Ip Man movies to play a major role in this film, and essentially is almost like the counterpart to what John Wick is for us, like almost the exact same path line, but someone who legitimately just followed all of the loyalties to the High Table.
The one guy I want to talk about too is I want to talk about Hiroki Sanada because
You mean the
he
guy who played Scorpion in Mortal
Mortal
Kombat?
Kombat. He is fantastic in everything he's in. I've seen
Oh
him in
God, yeah.
Last Samurai, Rush Hour 3, Wolverine, 47 Ronin. This guy, he's in so much stuff, and anytime he's in something and he appears on screen, I'm like, dude, this guy needs to be in everything.
Oh,
He
I
is just
agree.
that guy that he steals every movie he is in.
Another character, like we were talking about, like the fucking fat guy that John had to kill in order to reclaim his spot in the Riscaroma family.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the fact that
Mhm.
that was Scott Adkins.
No, are you serious?
Yup.
Wow, I got to look at a picture of this.
Because I had to stop and think about that that night, and I had a come to Jesus moment when I realized that.
Oh my god!
You know, the
Oh,
guy that worked with the director and Keanu for the first couple
yeah,
films before, he went and did his own thing at that point,
right.
and getting him to come back in 4 wearing, him being as big of a martial
Wow.
artist and a stuntman as he is, getting him to wear a fat suit and the gold teeth and everything, he does not look
Yeah.
like Scott Adkins.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. Wow. That they did a great job because I mean, honestly, I couldn't tell it was a fat suit. It looked like that was the actual dude, just with gold teeth in him.
It's just like how it's just like any movie you see with fat suit on. Like you can't tell if they do the
Mm-hmm.
makeup and the filming properly. You
Mm-hmm.
can't tell that's a fat suit from a lot of people.
Yeah. I mean, I honestly thought that the way the guy looked, that was just what the actor looked like.
Mm-hmm.
I would not have thought that was Scott Adkins. That wow, quite the transformation.
But all right, so this I think was probably the biggest time skip in the series that we got up to this point was
Mm-hmm.
between 3 and 4, because the events of John Wick 1 to the end of John Wick 3 was what, maybe a week and a half at most.
About that.
You got to figure it's probably had to have been at least a few weeks difference in between the ending of 3 to 4, because you don't see John all banged up and everything and bloodied up like he was.
Right. Which was a
See
smart
him get
decision.
like you see him striking the board
Mm-hmm.
to obviously make sure get himself back into shape and everything. So you figure it had to have been at least a few weeks for all of his injuries to heal. Not to mention the Bowery King looked like he was healed up from getting slashed in the face 7 times.
Yeah, I noticed that too. It almost looked as though like I don't know. I felt like there maybe should have been a lingering scar there that wasn't there.
There probably was that we just didn't notice, but it was the fact like enough time had to have passed for them to healed up enough to where they're not just hobbling around like fucking cripples.
Mm. Yeah, I mean that's true. That's true. And I what's really cool here is I love John's interaction with the Bowery King. I like those scenes. I just think that in this movie the Bowery King gets a little shortchanged.
Well, he didn't really. I think like how they're originally going to do it, because I think what they're like how we were talking about when we were going through the last film
Mhm.
was how they're originally planning to shoot 4 and 5 back to back,
Right.
and that way, because I think 4th one was going to set up like how it did probably, and the 5th one was going to be obviously them taking down the High Table. And I think the end result was still going to always be the same. John dies.
Could have been.
I think that's the only way you can end the series is with John Wick dying.
Yeah, I think I've only ever seen really one other path, but that would be a controversial story choice that I kind of had in mind. I mean, they could go down that route, but how people might perceive that if that happened might
Well,
might be a
go ahead.
controversial topic.
Let's talk about it.
Well, there was 2 ways, and it had to do with Helen. There could be 2 ways it could go. Number one, if they really felt compelled to make the High Table this almighty villain. They could have easily gone down the path of her, the High Table somehow faked her death and she was alive and John found out, and that made his goal to take down the High Table even more motivational. They could go down that route. Now, the more controversial of that would be something that could happen. The controversial part would be finding out that she faked her death and she actually was a villain. That would have been very controversial, and that would tarnish her. And
the
you don't
problem
want
I
that
have
either.
with that goes back to the events of the very first film.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you see her on the hospital bed, like, obviously terminally ill, cancer.
Right.
And you see John standing at, the gravesite of his wife.
That's true, but
So,
as you know, there's
that
ways to
theory-
fake deaths.
Yeah,
There's
but
ways.
how are you going to fake that, especially when John would have known? So considering his line of work, he would have known if someone was faking their death.
And that's a possibility. It's a route they could have gone down. It's a route they still could go down if they did Chapter 5. That's one logical way they could do it. Would they? I don't know. That's why I said that one is the more believable of the two. The other one would be very controversial because I think making her evil.
I legit think the only way that this series ended is with John's death.
Yeah,
John's story ended when he died.
The only other plot I see for Part 5, if you take away Helen out of the equation, it would be as simple as this. It would be John fakes his death because the High Table will never really truly let him go. He decides to, use, like, when he gets Kane and the Bowery King and form his own group to take down the High Table once and for all, to either take control of the High Table or destroy it once and for all. That's really the only way, I think, story-wise, if you eliminate Helen from the equation, that you could truly do it.
And this goes back to, I think this was a perfect way to end the franchise, to me, at least in terms of the story of John Wick as the main person, was how this ended, especially because that duel that they had at the church at sunrise with the dueling pistols. I think that John and Kane had probably discussed it as they were walking up the stairs.
Mm.
And Winston knew about it too, that the only way to really secure everything like that they had all bet on for this duel, with Winston becoming the manager again of the Continental after it gets rebuilt in New York. Kane and his daughter getting their freedoms, and John being free of the High Table and able to pursue a normal life, was exactly how it ended. And that was with when they got as close as they did in the third round of the duel with the pistols.
All right,
is to let Kane take that fatal shot at John, because where he got shot at is a major area to get shot. Like, you get hit there, that's a real high chance of dying.
Yeah.
And that was the reason why John didn't shoot back, because it was to draw the Marquis in to take the coup de grace, so that way John could go ahead and take him out.
Tell me if you believe, if you think this or not. Do you think that if, say, John doesn't go about it the way he does with the whole dueling thing and challenging the leader guy to the duel, do you think there was any way that John still could have gotten to him anyway?
Do you think there was any way that John could have gotten to him still without the duel?
Yeah.
Are you talking about the duel in general, or a duel with different weapons or different setting, or how you?
It's almost as though it got to a point where the only way they thought they could get to the Marquis guy with Bill Skarsgård's character is if he challenged him to this duel.
I don't think it was so much a matter of that. The only way to get to him would be for the duel. I think that was more so the only way to really end this once and for all, whether it be, for Winston and John to both be dead, or, the High Table to get off their fucking backs once and for all, was going to be for this duel. I think that was the only way it was going to happen, because it's just like how they discussed in the movie. Like the recurring topics that you got in this movie were, essentially repentance from, past sins,
Mm-hmm.
Mythology and a big mythos aspect with, Winston referring to the High Table as the Hydra, and not having enough bullets before the heads keep getting replaced.
Mm-hmm.
So even if they were able to get to him, they just replace the head. They just replace another head.
True.
They'd replace that head with another one before the body hit the ground. And it was just like how we found out at the beginning of the movie, when John went to Morocco, I think it was, and saw the new elder there, which I wasn't expecting to see a new elder out of all of a sudden.
No.
But for John to kill that one and finding out, that the elder could just easily be replaced.
Right.
Like, everything was under the High Table's orders. Like, anybody could be easily replaced at the High Table. Anybody could easily be replaced at, whatever position they were in. So I think this is the only true way, like, you could secure your once and for all, like, getting a way out for once and for all, like I said, and it was through the duel.
Do you? I guess the one thing too is, I really wish we could have found out who was the ultimate leader of the High Table.
Oh, I already know. We already know.
Who?
Klaus.
Klaus? Yeah, right. Yeah, right. Oh, yeah. No, I mean, I really wish we could have found that out, though. I really would like to know who the big King Dick is.
You see, here's the thing about that. I don't really think there is any big King Dick. I think it's just like how you had the Knights of the Round Table and everything. Yeah,
well,
you had
lots of King
Arthur.
Dicks. Yeah.
But they all had equal power at the High Table. Like, they were the High Table. They were essentially, like, they were the highest positions in regards to, the underworld that they lived in that society.
Yeah.
I think they all held equal votes and everything. Oh, we're looking at you, America. We could use some of that too here. Anyway, but that's besides the point. Sorry for getting political there, folks. But no, I think that's what it was. I don't think there was any one true person that was ruling over the High Table. I think there was all just a collection of all of them. And at any point, all right, cool, we're stepping up and taking over. Okay? You've got to find some way to, in their old laws and their old ways, that just like they did with the duel, how they can go ahead and just, like, take out the High Table once and for all. Like, there's got to be some way to do it, but we don't know about it, really.
No, I mean, like, Skarsgård's character, he's a powerful member of the High Table. You have the Harbinger, who was the high-ranking operative of the High Table. So these are guys that are pretty high up there. Now, mind you, maybe Skarsgård's character is one of the highest members of the High Table. Maybe he's one of 8, one of 10. He's obviously one of them because he was very powerful and had a lot of influence to what would happen. So I guess you could almost look at Skarsgård as being one of many. And I guess he could be our definitive one for the New York region. So therefore, he kind of would be the king anyway. But, I guess in the sense,
the way that they described it in the film, it's essentially he was given emergency power by the High Table to be the Marquis and have this power, because of the event of the beginning of the film, and that was John killing the Elder.
The Elder, yeah. Which, like you said, though, was a different Elder, which makes me wonder two things. A, was this a different Elder replacing the other Elder, or was it a recast?
They already said there was a different Elder.
So what happened to the other Elder?
Probably died or something. Died or was replaced.
I guess that'd be the only way it would work. But
the events of that led to a lot of this film happening, and that was the New York Continental being destroyed,
Bummer.
and led to Osaka's Continental manager getting killed by Kane. Not to mention, look, we have to take a look at Sharon. The events of that eventually really led to Sharon being killed by the Marquis.
Oh yeah, no question about it.
Because he wasn't going to let Winston be a martyr and everyone rise up. He was going to make Winston feel powerless.
Mm-hmm. Which he did. He was powerless throughout the whole movie.
Mm-hmm.
It was a pretty big shock when Sharon got killed. That was a pretty big shock.
The thing about that too, especially after this. By the way, this episode's dedicated to Lance Reddick, who did pass away on the 17th, I believe it was.
Yeah, right before the film was released. Yeah, that was a shock. I mean, did they say what his cause of death was?
I don't know if they did or not. I haven't really been tempted to even look into it because, it's out of respect. Like, I'm not going to bother trying to dig into that. But what made that so shocking in the film was the fact that it happened so early in the film. Not to mention, like, this close, you find out what happened there, like, this close after Lance Reddick dying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's why I was surprised to see his character die. I was like, wow, this is a little fresh.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. That was really fresh to see his character lying there dead, and I'm thinking, yeah, that's awkward.
Yeah.
He is, by the way, he is going to be in Ballerina as well. He did shoot Ballerina.
He's got because the events of Ballerina happened between 3 and 4.
3 and 4. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Which also too, the potential to continue the franchise may lie within who is leading Ballerina.
Maybe
it's a possibility because I know Wick John is supposed to appear in Ballerina as well.
Which you see him in trailer clips for the movie.
So based on the description, so Ana de Armas is playing Rooney, which is the lead character. She's a ballerina who seeks revenge by hunting the murderers of her family. The character was previously portrayed by a different actress in John Wick Chapter 3. So you did see her character. It's just she was played by somebody else in 3. But so maybe we'll see if there's potential to continue on maybe a franchise with her character or not. Maybe they have their continuation right there and we just don't see it yet.
It's possible, but like I said, I think with John dying in this film, I think that we got a finite ending that was just the cherry on top to the masterpiece that was John Wick leading the franchise. I think the only way you can continue the franchise from here is to do either prequels or events in between the movies. I don't think you can really do a film that takes place after it without ruining everything about the films.
And, again, it's maybe not. I mean, it's one of those things where the franchise could very easily end here. It could continue. There's a lot of ways this could go. And we'll soon find out. I mean, we know now the movie's going to be a financial success. So now we know the studio wants to do another one. Now the question is just going to be if, these two decide to, if they come up with something good enough to do it. We don't know. There's options. There's options on the table. It's not out of the realm of possibilities, but we'll see what's going to win out.
Yeah.
As time goes on. So, all right.
All right. Now let's get to the fun part, the grading of all of them.
Okay, so
John Wick 1.
John Wick 1, probably would have to give. Are we going to do out of 10 or are we going to do by letter grade?
Letter grade.
John Wick 1, I will give a B minus. Just because started the franchise, the movie, the first one was finding its footing. It doesn't move at the quickest pace like the other 3 do. It has to build the story up, of course, but the villain in number 1 is just okay compared to what we get later. So I'll give that one about a B minus. Chapter 2. Chapter 2 ultimately is my favorite of the franchise, so I would give that one a solid A. I like the villain, I like the action sequences, I just like the overall story, and I also like getting to see John realize that no matter what he does, he can't break free from his old life. And I think this is really the ultimate start of it, with the marker and things from his past really catching up to him. So I like two a lot. Number 3, again, that gets about an A-. It's really a step behind number two. The story in 3 is also very good. Comes to a pretty full-blown great conclusion. And then 4, see, it's hard for me to fairly grade 4 too, considering that I've seen the other 3 numerous times, and I've only seen this one time. So of course, its ranking could change as I see it more. As of right now, it probably would be around 2. Well, I'll give it a B to B plus, somewhere in between there. And we'll see if that changes from this point on. But yeah, but 2 is also my favorite of the 4.
Okay. So for me, the first one is also the weakest one on my list as well, just because, like you said, it was treated out like it should have really been a standalone film before the franchise got as popular as it did out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, like there was a lot of good action sequences, a lot of good pacing in the film. It was just get up and go from the beginning. They really didn't get off the gas pedal. I did like that. The villain, like you said, was a bit on the weaker side when it comes to villain roles in these kind of films. I can agree with you there. But overall, I'm not going to give it a B-. Like, I'm still going to give this a B+.
Okay.
2, this is where me and you differ. This was second on my list. I love everything you did say about the film. Was essentially everything that I did like about this one. I just think that 4 did 2 better.
Okay.
So I'm going to give 2 an A. I mean, it's still an A in my book.
Mm-hmm.
Parabellum, I had at an A-. I thought it was better than 3. Or Jesus Christ, it is 3. I thought it was better than the first one, but not on the level that 2 was.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say this is a hot topic here as a hot take. I wasn't as big of a fan of the adjudicator as other people were.
Yeah, she could have been given a little bit, maybe more to do. She was undercut a little bit, and I think by not letting her be somewhat of a fighter, I think kind of hurt her character.
I guess so, but that was still an A- to me.
Mm-hmm.
And then the A4 was just like the pinnacle. It is probably one of my favorite action films of all time.
Wow.
I'm gonna have to get that one like about as close to an A+ as I can.
Mm-hmm. I think the one thing too I want to note too is
one of the things that I want to discuss here too is that a lot of people's complaints about the movie were the length. I'm sorry, but
no,
do we not want to go back to the days where movies drew you in for that long? You don't even realize how long that the film's been going on.
That's exactly it.
Okay, yeah. Cool. Yeah, and maybe long, but you know what? Just because nowadays people have short attention spans and can't focus on a movie long enough to do that, these are the same people that say that they love movies like The Hobbit or Lord of the Rings or any of the Harry Potter movies or fucking Star Wars movies that have gone on for 2.5, 3, up to like 4 hours plus. Look at the Snyderverse cuts. These people, the Snyderverse cut of Justice League, those same people that are talking about the length of this being a little too long are those same people that are going, oh my God, the Snyderverse cut was so good. It was so worth the 4.5 hours of sitting there. Fuck off, people. You can't have your cake and eat it too if you're going to act like that.
Yeah.
Take the films for what they are. Like, if the movie was not up to par and with what you're expecting for the film, if it,
Mhm.
wasn't up to par with what the expectations were set when the trailers came out, the hype around and everything. I can understand all right, this is getting a little long. This movie hit it on every note, I thought, and went above and beyond it.
The only thing I would say is, if I had to judge the series on which of the four had the best pacing, not based on length, but best pacing, it goes back to I think two had the perfect pacing, um, because two didn't have much in the way of full downtime. It kind of jumped from scene to scene quickly. It didn't dwell on anything too long. Um, Yeah, I mean, and then pacing is different from length. It's not one and the same discussion or argument. Pacing just means
Yeah.
just how it felt in the speed of it. But yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, it length to me is never an issue. I've always said I don't care how long a movie is, as long as the length is
As long as the movie can grip you and keep you enamored and focused on the film for the length of the film, then it's worth it.
right, right. I've always said too. I'd rather have too much than not have enough.
Exactly.
Because sometimes you have movies that are so short and you leave scratching your head like, wow, that could use a half hour more to explain this or go deeper into this or do this. Instead of, you know what, the movie was really long, but you know what? I left out with every question I had answered and I have no lingering questions.
Yeah.
I'd rather have that.
Yeah.
So,
Anyway, so what we've got coming up, as we've just already discussed multiple times throughout this podcast so far today, has been what's next for the John Wick franchise. So we've got Ballerina coming out. That's supposed to be taking place in between the events of 3 and 4. We've
Yep.
got the Continental TV series that's going to be coming out here as well. That's going to be taking place time frame about the mid 70s. That we've got new casting, obviously, so it's going to portray a younger Winston, potentially a younger John Wick. We've got a younger Sharon in there.
yep. Yep. I don't know if anybody knows this too, but Mel Gibson is actually playing the second lead in the Continental.
Mm-hmm.
So this is going to be an interesting series. I'm excited for it. It's supposed to premiere sometime late this year. Hopefully sooner rather than later, especially after this movie. I know people are going to be chomping at the bit now for more material from this. So we're going to see. And then Ballerina is expected to come out sometime next year.
Yep. All right. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us for another episode of after another long hiatus of LCA Entertainment. We're glad to be back. Hopefully, we can go ahead and get started on our Predator retrospective next coming up here.
Yeah, we do know. We were told that Jeremy Larson will be taking a brief break. I don't know how long it's going to be yet. Could be a month, could be 2. I don't know yet. So I know whenever he comes back, that'll probably when we do Predator. Up to that point, we're going to have to discuss what exactly we're going to do up until his return. Whether we find another series to do a retrospective on or do theme-related episodes, I don't know yet. We'll have to discuss it also with our other colleague Martin and see what we all come up with. Martin has discussed, I don't know what the audience thinks of this, Martin has discussed about potentially doing some episodes on gaming, some game reviews of new games that come out, and maybe some discussions about big games. So that could also be a possibility too. I'm not really sure what big games are coming down the pike that are going to be worth the discussion. I mean, obviously, we're all going to have had to play that game in order to discuss it.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that's going to go. We'll have to further discuss that. But as far as what we're going to do next, just stay tuned to the social media channels, and we'll keep you informed as to what's coming. But I promise that we will not go 2, 3, 4 months without an episode again. We were going to try to get back into this and keep it consistent.
Exactly. All right. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us for another episode of LCA Entertainment Reviews. That's a wrap.
Cut and print.